Rachel Donovan's hands were shaking so hard she could barely push open the diner door. -8 degrees outside. 2 children clinging to her coat. 11 months since her husband died. And 4 men in a black SUV parked across the lot, waiting to follow her into the dark. She had walked 2 miles through the snow with a sprained ankle, a dead phone, and 3 instant soup packets in a plastic bag. Her 6-year-old daughter hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her 4-year-old son couldn't stop coughing. "Please help us tonight," she whispered to the waitress. "Just hot water. That's all we need." What happened in the next 60 seconds would pull 200 Hell's Angels into a town that had spent 7 years pretending not to see a monster in a saint's clothing. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know what city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, enjoy the story. The door of Red Lantern Roadhouse swung open at 11:47 p.m., and Rachel Donovan stepped inside, carrying everything she had left in the world. A plastic bag with 3 instant soup packets, a cracked phone with 17% battery, 2 children who hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and a bruise on her wrist that looked exactly like a man's handprint. Emma, 6 years old, clutched a stuffed rabbit with 1 ear missing. She pressed it against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her heart from falling out. Lucas, 4, coughed into Rachel's coat. The cough was dry and stubborn, the kind that came from cold nights and empty stomachs. Rachel's boots squeaked on the wet tile. Every squeak reminded her she didn't belong in warm places anymore. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease and wet wool drying near the heater. A radiator behind the counter clicked steadily. Tick, 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 like a countdown to something Rachel couldn't name. She approached the register holding her plastic bag like it might fall apart and take the last of her dignity with it. The waitress looked up. Gray hair pulled back tight. Name tag said Dolores. Eyes tired but not unkind. "What can I get you?" Dolores asked. Rachel's throat closed. She had practiced this moment 14 times on the walk here. The words still came out broken. "A cup of hot water," she whispered. "I have soup packets. We can pay. I have enough for water." Dolores glanced at the clock. 11:48 p.m. The sign on the door said midnight closing. "Kitchen's shutting down in 12 minutes, Dolores said. It sounded like an apology she'd given before. Before Rachel could respond, a man in a ski jacket stepped between them, like she was carrying bad weather inside her coat. "Ring us up," he said to Dolores. Loud, eyes forward. "We're in a hurry." He moved the sugar caddy away from the edge of the counter, like Rachel might steal it. Like hunger was contagious. Rachel stepped back. Her ankle screamed. She'd twisted it on the walk here, stepping wrong in the dark. But she'd kept walking because stopping meant freezing. Emma tugged her coat. "Mama, shh, baby, it's okay." It wasn't okay. Nothing had been okay for 11 months. Rachel tried again. Softer this time. Smaller. "Ma'am, just hot water. We can stand outside with it. We won't bother anyone." A businessman at a nearby booth leaned toward Dolores. He whispered, but not quietly enough. "Can you move them along? I don't want problems." Problems? Like a hungry mother and 2 cold children were a disease that might spread. Dolores's eyes dropped to the counter. Rachel guided Emma and Lucas toward a small table near the window. Maybe if she made herself invisible enough, someone would forget to kick her out before midnight. The window rattled with wind. Outside, snow drifted under the parking lot lights. The darkness beyond the highway looked endless. Rachel had walked 2 miles through that darkness, Her car battery had died 3 hours ago. Her phone was almost dead. And somewhere out there, 4 men in a black SUV were waiting for her to be alone again. A teenage couple in a corner booth laughed at something on their phone. Rachel caught the tiny red recording light before she caught the smile. The girl was filming them. The boy flicked a French fry toward the floor. It skidded near Lucas's boot like bait. Lucas froze. His eyes went to the fry, then to Rachel. Instinct fighting shame. Rachel stepped forward and covered the fry with her own boot. She shook her head once, small and firm. The teenagers laughed anyway. The phone stayed pointed at them. That was rejection number 3. Not loud, just humiliating. And then the last rejection came from people who wore kindness like a uniform. 3 women stood near the door with clipboards decorated in heart stickers. They wore matching pink scarves. Rachel recognized their smiles from church bulletins. The Hearts of Hope Charity Committee. One of them, a woman with silver hair and perfect makeup, looked Rachel up and down like she was checking for stains. "We need to keep the diner peaceful," the woman said. Her voice was sweet as antifreeze. "There are families here." Rachel blinked. "We are a family." The woman didn't flinch. "The holidays are for families who plan ahead, dear." The words hit Rachel's chest like a door slamming shut. She looked at Emma's hollow cheeks, at Lucas's runny nose, at the one-eared rabbit that Emma refused to let go of, even when she was so tired she could barely stand. She looked at her own wrist, where the bruise was fading from purple to yellow. A handprint she couldn't wash off. A reminder of what happened 4 days ago when Victor Hale's boys caught her behind the bus station and told her she'd sign or freeze. At sunrise, she'd have nowhere to go. The motel had kicked her out this morning. Her bank account showed negative $47. Her phone had one recording on it that could send a man to prison. And this town was full of people who kept saying the same thing, "Not my business." Rachel started counting under her breath. It was how she kept panic from driving. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's when the room changed, not with shouting, with a chair scraping back, slow and deliberate. A man stood from a booth in the back corner and walked toward her with the calm of someone who didn't need to prove anything. He was tall, broad, gray-bearded. A faded Marine Corps tattoo showed on his forearm where his sleeve was pushed up. He wore a black leather vest with patches that made half the diner go quiet. Hell's Angels. The words sat on his back like a warning and a promise. In Ridgewood Hollow, folks called him Shepherd. Now you might be thinking you know what happens when a biker sees a mother being cornered on a freezing night. You might be picturing threats, raised voices, a scene. Shepherd didn't do any of that. He knelt on the tile, so his eyes were level with Emma's. "Hey there," he said softly. His voice was gravel wrapped in flannel. "I'm Danny. What's your rabbit's name?" Emma tightened her grip on the stuffed animal. She looked at Rachel for permission. Rachel nodded once. Barely. "Cotton," Emma whispered. "Cotton." Shepherd smiled. It was a real smile, not a performance. "That's a good name. Cotton looks like he's been through some adventures." "He only has one ear," Emma said. "That just means he's been brave," Shepherd said. "Brave things always show their scars." He looked up at Rachel. His eyes were steady. Not pitying, not judging, just present. "What do you need?" he asked. 4 words. The first honest question anyone had asked her in months. Rachel's walls cracked. "Can my children eat?" she asked. "We haven't..." It's been since yesterday. Shepard didn't hesitate. He turned toward his table in the back, where 3 other men in leather vests were already standing. "Bring my plate," he called, "and whatever's warm in that kitchen." Dolores moved before anyone could object. Her hands were shaking, but she was moving. The woman in the pink scarf stepped forward. "Excuse me, but this isn't appropriate. We have standards for—" "Ma'am." Shepard didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I'm going to ask you once real politely to step back and let this mother feed her children." The woman's mouth opened, closed. She looked around for support. The businessman with the laptop was suddenly very interested in his screen. The family in ski jackets was putting on their coats. The teenagers had stopped filming. The woman in pink stepped back. Shepard turned to Rachel. "Sit," he said. "Your babies eat. You're safe now." Safe. Rachel almost didn't recognize the word. She slid into the booth Shepard had been sitting in. It was still warm from his body heat. Emma climbed in beside her. Lucas crawled onto the seat across from them, eyes wide, watching everything. A plate appeared. Half a burger still warm. French fries that hadn't gone cold yet. A cup of soup that Dolores must have heated in the back. Lucas looked at Rachel, waiting. "Eat, baby," she whispered. "Go ahead." He took one careful bite, then another. Food turning into heat, heat turning into hope. Emma watched for another moment, then reached for a fry. She ate it slowly, like she was afraid it might disappear. Shepard slid into the seat next to Rachel. Not crowding her, just present. "I'm Danny Shepard," he said. "My friends are going to bring more food. You're going to eat too, and then you're going to tell me what's really going on." Rachel's eyes filled with tears she couldn't afford to cry. "You don't want to know," she said. "Ma'am?" Shepard's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been watching you since you walked in that door. You've got a sprained ankle you're trying to hide, bruises on your wrist that didn't come from falling, and you keep looking at the parking lot like something's out there waiting for you." He paused. "So yes, I want to know." Rachel's hands started shaking. "There's a man," she whispered. "He's been hunting us for 3 weeks." Shepard's eyes didn't waver. "Name?" Rachel hesitated. Names were dangerous. Names got people hurt. But she was so tired of carrying this alone. "Victor Hale," she said. Behind the counter, Dolores went still, just for a second. But Rachel caught it. Shepard caught it too. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Tell me everything," he said. And Rachel did. She told him about Marcus, her husband, who died 11 months ago in a construction accident, about the life insurance policy worth $380,000 that was supposed to keep them safe. She told him about Victor Hale, who appeared at her church 3 weeks after the funeral. He called himself a grief benefits coordinator. He smiled like a pastor and spoke like a friend. He told her he could help her navigate the paperwork for free. She told him about the fees that started small and grew larger. Processing fees. Administrative fees. Always cash, always urgent, always with a smile. She told him about the documents she signed without getting copies, the address changes she didn't authorize, the benefits checks that stopped coming. And she told him about 3 weeks ago, behind this very diner, when she heard Victor Hale on a speakerphone call that she was never supposed to hear. "What did he say?" Shepard asked. Rachel's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "He said, keep her scared, not bruised. Cold weather does the work. He said, she signs January 15th or she freezes. That policy is $380. I'm not losing $380. Shepard's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes went cold. "There's more," Rachel said. "He mentioned a name, Teresa. He said same playbook as Teresa." From behind the counter, Dolores made a small sound, like a wound opening. Shepard looked at her. "Dolores?" The waitress's hands were trembling so badly she had to set down the coffee pot. "Teresa Marsh," Dolores said. "She was a widow. She froze to death in her trailer 2 winters ago. Everyone said it was an accident." The diner went silent. Shepard turned back to Rachel. "You recorded that call?" Rachel nodded. "My phone was in my pocket. The screen's cracked, but the audio's there. I took it to the police." "And," Rachel laughed, "it was a broken sound. They said it wasn't enough. They said I needed to file a formal complaint. They said they'd look into it." Her voice cracked. "That was 3 weeks ago. Nothing happened. Nothing ever happens." Shepard was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. "Wait here," he said. He walked to the back of the diner where his brothers were gathered. Rachel watched them talk in low voices. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see their faces. One by one, they went from curious to angry to something harder than anger, something that looked like purpose. Shepard came back to the booth. He crouched down so he was at eye level with Emma and Lucas. "Hey," he said softly. "I need to talk to your mom for a minute. My friend Paul is going to bring you some hot chocolate. Is that okay?" Emma looked at Rachel. Rachel nodded. "Okay," Emma whispered. A man with thick hands and kind eyes Paul apparently approached with 2 steaming mugs. He had a medical bag at his feet that Rachel hadn't noticed before. "Small sips," Paul told the children. "Warm your bellies slow." Shepard moved to the seat across from Rachel. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low enough that only she could hear. "Those men in the parking lot," he said. "How many?" Rachel's blood went cold. She hadn't mentioned the parking lot. "You saw them. 4 hoodies by the ice machine," Shepard said. "They've been watching the door since before you came in. They're waiting for this place to close so they can follow you." Rachel's hands started shaking again. "They work for Victor," she said. "They've been following me for weeks. They grabbed me behind the bus station 4 days ago, told me I had until January 15th to sign the papers, or what?" Rachel couldn't say it. She just touched her wrist where the bruise was. Shepard nodded slowly. He understood. "January 15th, he said. "That's 4 days from now." "He has a notary scheduled," Rachel said. 9 a.m. He said if I don't show up, the policy closes and I lose everything. But if I sign... She couldn't finish. "If you sign, he gets $380,000, and you become another accident," Shepard said flatly. "Another Teresa." Rachel nodded. Tears were streaming down her face now. She couldn't stop them. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I've tried everything. The police won't help. The church won't help. Everyone in this town knows him. Everyone thinks he's a saint. And I'm just..." Her voice broke. "I'm just a broke widow with 2 kids and nobody believes me." Shepard reached across the table. He didn't grab her hand. He just placed his palm flat on the table, an offering she could take or leave. "I believe you," he said. 3 words. But they hit Rachel like a wave. "Why?" she asked. Shepard's jaw tightened. "Because 17 years ago, a man just like Victor Hale took everything from my sister. Insurance, money, house, dignity. She ended up on the street with her kid. I was overseas. I couldn't help." He paused. His voice went rough. "She didn't make it." Rachel stared at him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be sorry," Shepard said. "Be ready. Because I'm about to make a phone call, and when I'm done, things are going to move fast. I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" Rachel almost laughed. "I don't even know you." "You know enough," Shepard said. "You know I'm the only person in this room who looked at you like a human being. You know my brothers are the only people who moved to help instead of looking away. And you know those men in the parking lot aren't going anywhere. He leaned closer. In about 15 minutes, this diner is going to close. When it does, they're going to expect you to walk out alone. They're going to expect to follow you into the dark. Rachel's throat closed. What am I supposed to do? Shepard stood. He pulled out his phone. You're not going to do anything, he said. You're going to sit here with your children and let them eat. You're going to let Paul check them over because they haven't seen a doctor in too long, and I can tell. And you're going to let me handle what comes next. What comes next? Shepard was already dialing. Reinforcements, he said. He walked toward the side of the diner where the noise softened. Rachel watched him raise the phone to his ear. Raymond, he said. It's Danny. A pause. I need every brother within 60 miles at Red Lantern. Now. Another pause. Rachel couldn't hear the other side of the conversation. A mother and her 2 kids are being hunted over a 380 policy. Local law won't move. 4 hostiles in the lot. We're not waiting for the system on this one. The longest pause yet. Then Shepard nodded once. Say no more, he said. We're coming. He ended the call and walked back to Rachel's booth. How long? One of his brothers asked. 16 minutes for the first wave, Shepard said. Full turnout by midnight. 16 minutes. Rachel looked at the clock on the wall. 11:52 p.m. Outside, one of the hoodies kicked at the snow like he was bored. Waiting. Inside, Lucas had stopped coughing. The hot chocolate was working. Emma's eyelids were drooping, but she was fighting sleep, still watching everything. 16 minutes, Rachel repeated. Shepard sat across from her again. 16 minutes, he confirmed. And then this town is going to have to watch. The man with the medical bag, Paul, crouched beside the booth. Ma'am, he said to Rachel, I'm a medic, Army retired. Mind if I check the kids over nothing invasive? Just want to make sure they're warming up right. Rachel hesitated. Old instincts screamed at her not to trust anyone, but Emma and Lucas needed help she couldn't give them. Okay, she whispered. Paul moved with practiced efficiency. He checked pulses, listened to Lucas's breathing, frowned slightly at something he heard. Chest's congested, he said. Not dangerous yet, but he needs warm fluids and rest. When did he last see a doctor? Rachel's shame burned. 4 months ago. Paul didn't judge. He just nodded and made a note on his phone. We'll handle that, he said. First things first. Another man approached the booth. This one was younger, with sharp eyes and quick fingers. He was already looking at Rachel's cracked phone. I'm Marcus, he said. Most people call me Ghost. I handle the technical stuff. Mind if I back up that recording before your battery dies? Rachel handed over the phone. Her hands were shaking. Ghost worked fast. His fingers flew across the cracked screen. Got it, he said after 30 seconds. Audio's clean, timestamps visible. I'm making 3 copies. 1 stays with us, 1 goes to law, 1 goes somewhere they can't touch. A third man appeared. This one had a clipped haircut and watchful eyes that didn't miss exits or threats. He didn't introduce himself as law enforcement, but Rachel could tell. I'm James, he said. People call me Sentinel, former state trooper. I need you to walk me through everything you signed, everything you were promised, and everything that didn't happen the way it was supposed to. Rachel's head was spinning. These men were organized, professional. They moved like they'd done this before. Why are you helping me? She asked. The question came out before she could stop it. Shepard answered. Because someone should have helped you months ago, he said. And because the man you're running from has been running this game for years and nobody's stopped him yet. You know him. Shepard's jaw tightened. We know the type, he said. They're everywhere. They find grieving families. They smile. They help. And then they take everything and call it charity. He leaned forward. Victor Hale has been operating out of this town for at least 7 years. We've heard rumors, stories, but nobody's ever come forward with proof. His eyes met Rachel's. Until now. The weight of his words settled over Rachel like a blanket. She wasn't just a victim, she was evidence. The recording, she said slowly. It's not just about me. No, Shepard said. It's about everyone he's ever touched. Every widow he's cornered. Every family he's drained. Every accident that happened right when it was convenient for him. He paused. It's about Teresa Marsh. Dolores appeared beside the booth. Her hands were still trembling, but her jaw was set. I saw something, she said. Her voice was quiet, but determined. 3 weeks ago, behind this diner, Victor Hale and 4 young men. I heard them talking about keeping someone scared. She looked at Rachel. I should have said something. I should have called someone. But Victor, he runs the Hearts of Hope charity. He's on every committee. He knows everyone. I told myself it wasn't my business. Her eyes filled with tears. But I wrote down the license plate. I couldn't throw it away. She pulled a folded napkin from her apron pocket and slid it across the table to Sentinel. Sentinel unfolded it slowly. His eyes narrowed at the letters and numbers. This is good, he said. This is really good. Dolores wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry it took so long, she said to Rachel. I'm so sorry. Rachel didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Ghost looked up from his phone. First wave's 8 minutes out, he said. 23 brothers confirmed. How many total? Sentinel asked. Ghost checked his screen again. 200, he said. Full turnout. 200. Rachel's breath caught. Shepard noticed. Scared? He asked. I don't know what I am, Rachel admitted. That's okay, Shepard said. You don't have to know. You just have to sit tight and let us work. He looked toward the window. The 4 hoodies were still there, smoking, laughing, waiting. 12 minutes, Shepard said. That's how long until the diner closes. That's how long they think they have to wait before they can take you. Rachel's heart hammered. What happens at midnight? Shepard almost smiled. At midnight, he said, they realize they're not the biggest predators in this town. The radiator clicked on. Tick, tick, tick. Lucas had fallen asleep against Emma's shoulder. Emma was fighting to stay awake, her one-eared rabbit pressed against her cheek. For the first time in 11 months, they looked warm. Rachel counted seconds in her head. Old habit. Safety mechanism. 1, 2, 3, 4. At 11:56 p.m., the first rumble reached them. Low, distant, like thunder that hadn't decided whether to arrive yet. It grew and grew and grew until the windows of Red Lantern Roadhouse began to tremble. Outside, the 4 hoodies stopped laughing. They turned toward the highway confusion, replacing boredom on their faces. Headlights appeared on the access road. Not 1. Not 2. Dozens. They came in formation, precise rows, cutting through the falling snow engines, roaring like a wall of sound that could be felt in the chest. The first wave had arrived. And they weren't alone. Rachel watched as motorcycle after motorcycle pulled into the overflow lot across the street. They parked in clean lines like a military formation, like a drill team, like men who had done this before and knew exactly what they were doing. The engines cut off almost in unison. The sudden silence was louder than the noise had been. 200 Hell's Angels stepped off their bikes and stood there. Not shouting, not threatening, not posturing, just present. The 4 hoodies in the parking lot didn't move. They were frozen cigarettes burning down to their fingers, staring at the wall of leather and chrome that had just materialized out of the darkness. Inside the diner, Rachel couldn't breathe. Shepard put a hand on her shoulder. Not gripping, not owning, just steadying. "They're here," he said quietly. Rachel's voice came out as a whisper. Why would 200 strangers come out on a freezing night for someone they've never met?" Shepard looked at her. His eyes were soft, but certain. "Because that's what family does," he said. "And tonight, you're family." The door of the diner opened. An older man walked in. White hair, hands like knotted rope eyes that had seen decades of roads and fights and losses and victories. He moved slowly, but every step carried weight. The other brothers parted for him without being asked. He stopped at Rachel's booth and looked down at her sleeping children, at the one-eared rabbit, at the empty soup bowl and the half-eaten burger. Then he looked at Rachel. "I'm Raymond," he said. His voice was gravel soaked in whiskey. "People call me Old Wolf." Rachel didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing that felt true. "Thank you for coming." Old Wolf nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "The night's not over." He turned to Shepard. "What do we have?" Shepard's answer was precise. Facts, not emotions. A recording that proves intent, a license plate that ties Victor Hale to intimidation, a paper trail going back at least 7 years, 4 hostels outside, and a mother with 2 kids who have 4 days before they become another accident. Old Wolf's jaw tightened. "And the law? Slow," Sentinel said. "Compromised. Local deputies in Hale's pocket. But I've got contacts at the state level who'll move if we give them enough to work with." Old Wolf was quiet for a long moment. The radiator ticked. The snow pressed against the windows. 200 men waited in the cold for his word. Finally, he spoke. "Then we give them everything." He looked at Rachel. His eyes were kind, but there was steel underneath. "Mrs. Donovan," he said, "I need you to understand something. What happens next isn't about revenge. It's about evidence, procedure, making sure the people who should have protected you actually do their jobs." Rachel nodded. She didn't trust her voice. "We're going to document everything," Old Wolf continued. "Every statement, every timestamp, every piece of paper that man touched. We're going to build a case so airtight that no judge, no prosecutor, no good old boy network can make it disappear." He leaned closer. "And we're going to do it tonight, before Victor Hale has time to destroy what we need." Rachel's heart was pounding. "What about those men?" she asked. "The ones outside?" Old Wolf glanced toward the window. The 4 hoodies hadn't moved. They were still standing by the ice machine, but their posture had changed. They looked smaller now. Uncertain. "They're not going anywhere," Old Wolf said. "And neither are we." He straightened up. "Let's get to work." The room shifted into motion. Ghost set up a laptop at a corner booth and started organizing files. Sentinel pulled out a notepad and began taking formal statements. Paul continued monitoring the children, keeping his voice low and steady. And outside, 200 Hell's Angels stood in the falling snow, a silent wall between Rachel Donovan and the darkness that had been hunting her. Rachel watched it all with a feeling she barely recognized. It took her a moment to name it. Hope. She'd almost forgotten what it felt like. But tonight, in a roadside diner with a closing sign on the door and a radiator that wouldn't stop ticking, Hope had walked in wearing leather and chrome, and it wasn't leaving until the job was done. Old Wolf turned to face the room, and his voice carried without rising. Ghost, pull everything off that phone before it dies. Sentinel gets statements from anyone who's ever seen Victor Hale do something that didn't sit right. Paul, keep those children stable. And somebody get that waitress a chair before she falls over. Dolores was shaking so hard she could barely stand. A brother guided her to a booth and pressed a cup of coffee into her hands. Drink, he said. Slow breaths. Ghost worked fast, his fingers moving across Rachel's cracked phone like he was defusing a bomb. The battery showed 11% now. 10, 9. Come on, he muttered. Come on, come on. The screen flickered. 8%. Ghost's jaw tightened. Transferring the main audio file now. 30 seconds. Rachel watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. Her whole case, her whole future reduced to a thin line, moving pixel by pixel. 7%. 20 seconds, Ghost said. 6%. The screen went black. Rachel's heart stopped. Ghost didn't move for one terrible second. Then he exhaled and held up his own phone. Got it, he said. Transfer completed at 6%. 3 backup copies uploading now. Rachel's legs went weak. She grabbed the edge of the booth to steady herself. That was close, she whispered. Close doesn't count, Ghost said. We got it. That's what matters. Sentinel was already at Dolores's booth, notepad, open, pen, ready. Start from the beginning, he told her. What you saw, when you saw it. Don't guess, don't interpret, just tell me exactly what happened. Dolores took a shaky breath. 3 weeks ago, she said. Tuesday night. I was taking out the trash around 10:15. Victor Hale's SUV was parked behind the diner near the propane cage. How did you know it was his vehicle? Everyone knows Victor's truck. Black Ford Expedition custom plates. He drives it to every charity event like he's some kind of celebrity. What did you see? Dolores's hands tightened around her coffee cup. 4 young men. Hoodies like the ones outside right now. They were standing around the truck, and Victor was in the driver's seat with his window down. He had someone on speakerphone. Could you hear this conversation? Dolores nodded slowly. Pieces of it. The wind kept cutting in and out, but I heard him say keep her scared and something about cold weather. And I heard him say a number. 380. Sentinel wrote without looking up. Did you see anyone else? Any indication of who he was talking about? Dolores's eyes went to Rachel. I didn't know then, she admitted. But I knew something was wrong. The way he was talking, the way those boys were laughing like it was all a big joke. I went back inside and I wrote down his license plate on a napkin. Why didn't you report it? Dolores's face crumpled. Because Victor Hale runs the Hearts of Hope charity. He's on the town council. He knows the mayor, the police chief, everyone. I told myself I must have misheard. I told myself it wasn't my business. Her voice broke. But I couldn't throw away that napkin. I kept it in my apron pocket for 3 weeks like it was burning a hole through the fabric. Sentinel reached across the table and put his hand over hers. That napkin might be the thing that puts him away, he said. You did the right thing, even if it took a while. Rachel watched from her booth. Emma asleep against her shoulder. Lucas curled up on the seat with his head in her lap. Paul had covered them both with a blanket that someone had produced from somewhere. Her story matches yours, Shepard said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. That's 2 independent witnesses placing Hale at the same location discussing the same target. Is that enough? It's a start, but we need more. Ghost looked up from his laptop. I'm running Hale's name through some databases, he said. Publicly available stuff. Property records, business filings, court documents. Find anything? Ghost's expression darkened. Hale Family Services LLC was incorporated 7 years ago. Listed purpose grief counseling and benefits coordination. No employees on record. No physical office. Just a P.O. box and a phone number. That's not a business, Sentinel said. That's a shell. It gets worse. I found 17 insurance payouts over the last 6 years that list Hale Family Services as either beneficiary or authorized representative. Average payout $200,000. Rachel felt sick. 17 families. At least, Ghost said. These are just the ones I can find in public records. There could be more. Old Wolf had been listening from across the room. He walked over slowly, his boots heavy on the tile. 17 families, he repeated. And nobody noticed. People noticed, Sentinel said bitterly. They just didn't do anything. How is that possible? Rachel asked. How does someone steal from 17 families without getting caught? Ghost answered without looking up from his screen. Because he's smart. He doesn't take everything at once. He takes fees here, processing charges there, redirects benefits to a different address. By the time the victims realize what's happening, the money's gone, and the paperwork's so tangled they can't prove anything. And the victims? Ghost's jaw tightened. Most of them were widows, single mothers, people who were already struggling and didn't have the resources to fight back. Rachel's stomach turned. People like me. Yeah, Ghost said softly. People like you. The door of the diner opened and a blast of cold air swept in. A brother entered, snow dusting his shoulders, his face grim. Shepard, he said. Those 4 outside, they just made a phone call. Shepard stood immediately. To who? Couldn't hear the whole thing, but I caught a name. Hale. They're reporting back. What did they say? Something about complications and too many witnesses. One of them asked if they should wait or leave. What was the answer? The brother's expression was hard. Wait. Someone's coming. Rachel's blood went cold. He's sending more people. Shepard put a hand on her shoulder. He's sending someone to see what's going on. That's actually good. Good? How is that good? Because it means he's worried. He doesn't know what's happening in here. He doesn't know we have the recording. He's making decisions based on incomplete information. Old Wolf stepped forward. How long until this someone arrives? They didn't say. But if Hale's at home, it's probably 20 minutes from here. Then we have 20 minutes to get our ducks in a row. Old Wolf looked around the room. Sentinel, I need that state contact on the phone now. Ghost compile everything you have into a single file. Time-stamped, organized, ready to send. Paul, how are those kids? Stable, Paul said. But the boy needs to see a doctor soon. His lungs don't sound good. We'll handle that. First we handle this. Sentinel was already dialing. He put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. It rang 3 times before someone picked up. Sentinel. A woman's voice alert despite the late hour. It's midnight. This better be important. Detective Warren, I've got a live situation. Insurance fraud, extortion, intimidation of witnesses, possible connection to an unexplained death. We have audio evidence, documentary evidence, and multiple witnesses ready to give statements. A pause. Where are you? Red Lantern Roadhouse, Ridgewood Hollow. The victim is here with 2 minor children. 4 known associates of the suspect are in the parking lot. The suspect may be sending additional personnel. Another pause longer this time. Ridgewood Hollow is Deputy Coyle's jurisdiction. Deputy Coyle is compromised. I have reason to believe he's been running interference for the suspect for at least 2 years. Detective Warren's voice sharpened. That's a serious accusation. I've got 17 insurance payouts to a shell company and a waitress who's been too scared to report what she saw because she knows the local law won't act. I've got a widow who went to the police 3 weeks ago with an audio recording of the suspect planning her murder, and nothing happened. Silence on the line. Send me what you have, Detective Warren said finally. I'll wake up a judge. Ghost's fingers flew across his keyboard. Sending now, he said. Audio file, transcript, license plate, business records, timeline. Everything. Received, Detective Warren said after a moment. This is comprehensive. We don't do things halfway, Old Wolf said. Apparently not. A pause. I can have a state trooper there in 40 minutes, maybe 30 if I push. That might be too late. The suspect is sending someone. Then stall. Document everything. Don't let anyone leave, and don't let anyone get hurt. Can you do that? Old Wolf looked around the room at 200 brothers who had ridden through the snow on a freezing night to protect a woman they'd never met. Yeah, he said. We can do that. 40 minutes, Detective Warren said. Hold the line. The call ended. Rachel let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. 40 minutes, she repeated. 40 minutes, Shepard confirmed. That's nothing. We've waited longer for pizza. The tension broke just slightly. A few of the brothers chuckled, but Rachel wasn't laughing. She was looking at the window where the 4 hoodies were still standing, watching, waiting. What if he sends more than just someone? She asked. What if he sends everyone? Shepard's expression didn't change. Then everyone gets to meet 200 of my closest friends. Outside headlights appeared on the access road. A single vehicle moving fast. That was quick, Ghost said. Shepard moved toward the window. Too quick. Hale couldn't get here that fast from his house. Then who is it? The vehicle pulled into the parking lot. A white sedan with a light bar on top. Cops, someone muttered. The door of the sedan opened and a man stepped out. Uniform. Badge. The kind of swagger that came from knowing everyone in town owed him favors. Deputy Coyle, Dolores whispered. Her face had gone pale. Sentinel's jaw tightened. The compromised one. Deputy Coyle walked toward the 4 hoodies first. They talked briefly, too quiet to hear from inside. Then Coyle looked at the rows of motorcycles at the brothers standing in the cold, and his expression shifted from confident to uncertain. He walked toward the diner door. Nobody says anything they don't have to, Old Wolf instructed quietly. Let him talk. Let him show us what he's here for. The door swung open. Deputy Coyle stepped inside, bringing cold air and bad intentions with him. He was maybe 45, thick through the middle, with the kind of face that smiled too easily, and eyes that never matched the smile. Evening, folks, he said, looking around the room like he owned it. Got a report of a disturbance. No disturbance here, Old Wolf said calmly. Just some friends having coffee. Coyle's eyes swept over the leather vests, the patches, the sheer number of bodies packed into the small diner. That's a lot of friends for a Tuesday night. We're popular. Coyle's gaze landed on Rachel. Ma'am, he said, his voice dripping with false concern. Are you all right? Someone said you might be in some kind of trouble. Rachel's throat closed. She knew this trick. She'd seen it before. The sympathetic voice, the helpful offer, the trap hidden underneath. She's fine, Shepard said, stepping between Coyle and the booth. She's with us. Coyle's smile tightened. And who are you? A concerned citizen. Concerned about what? Concerned about why a deputy would show up at a diner at midnight because a mother asked for hot water. Coyle's mask slipped for just a second, just long enough for Rachel to see what was underneath. I'm just doing my job, he said, making sure everyone's safe. Everyone is safe. You can go now. Coyle didn't move. I'd like to speak with the lady, alone. That's not going to happen. The 2 men stared at each other, The diner had gone completely silent except for the radiator's steady tick. Coyle's hand drifted toward his belt. Not to his gun. To his radio. "I could call for backup," he said quietly. "Clear this place out. Take everyone in for questioning." "You could try," Old Wolf said from across the room. "But then you'd have to explain to a state fraud investigator why you interfered with an active investigation." Coyle froze. "What investigation?" "The one into Victor Hale and Hale Family Services, LLC. The one that involves 17 insurance fraud cases, an audio recording of extortion, and a suspicious death that's about to get reclassified." Coyle's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." Old Wolf walked slowly toward him. "You don't know anything about the widow who came to you 3 weeks ago with evidence of a crime. You don't know anything about the phone calls you made afterward. You don't know anything about the families who filed complaints that somehow never got investigated." Coyle's hand was trembling now. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Victor Hale is a respected member of this community. Victor Hale is a predator who's been feeding on grieving families for 7 years, Sentinel said, and you've been helping him." "That's not true." "Then why are you here, Deputy? Why did you drive across town at midnight because a woman asked for hot water at a diner?" Coyle had no answer. Ghost looked up from his laptop. "State trooper just passed the county line," he said. "ETA 22 minutes. Coyle's eyes darted to the door. "You can leave," Old Wolf said quietly. "You can walk out that door right now and drive away. Or you can stay and be here when Detective Warren's people arrive with questions about your relationship with Victor Hale." Coyle stood frozen for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out without another word. The brothers watched him get into his sedan, watched him speak briefly with the 4 hoodies, watched all 5 vehicles pull out of the parking lot and disappear into the night. "They're running," Ghost said. "Let them run," Old Wolf replied. "They can't run far enough." Rachel was shaking. "He would have taken me," she whispered. "If you weren't here, he would have taken me to Victor." Shepard crouched beside her booth. "But we are here," he said. "And you're not going anywhere except somewhere safe." Emma stirred against Rachel's shoulder. "Mama," she mumbled sleepily. "Where are we?" Rachel stroked her daughter's hair. "We're with friends, baby. Go back to sleep." Emma's eyes drifted shut. Lucas coughed in his sleep, a wet sound that made Paul frown. "We need to get him to a doctor tonight," Paul said. "That cough is getting worse." "First we wait for the state trooper," Shepard said. "Then we move." Ghost's laptop chimed. "Heads up," he said. "I just found something in the court records. Teresa Marsh, the woman who froze 2 years ago. She filed a complaint against Victor Hale 6 weeks before she died." The room went still. "What kind of complaint?" Sentinel asked. "Fraud. She claimed he tricked her into signing documents that gave him control of her late husband's insurance benefits. The case was assigned to Deputy Coyle for investigation." "Let me guess," Old Wolf said. "The investigation went nowhere." "Worse. The complaint was dismissed 3 days after it was filed. Reason given insufficient evidence." Rachel felt like she was going to be sick. "He killed her," she whispered. "He killed her, and made it look like an accident." "We don't know that for certain," Sentinel said carefully, "but we know enough to get her case reopened." Ghost kept scrolling. "There's more. Teresa's insurance policy was for $245,000. Beneficiary Hale Family Services, LLC. Payout date, March 2022. 6 weeks after her death." "The same pattern," Rachel said. "He did the same thing to her that he's trying to do to me." And he would have gotten away with it again, Old Wolf said, if you hadn't walked through that door tonight. Rachel looked at her sleeping children, at the one-eared rabbit clutched in Emma's arms, at the empty soup bowl that had been the first real meal they'd had in 2 days. She had come in here begging for hot water. Now she was the key to bringing down a man who had destroyed at least 17 families and killed at least 1 woman. 20 minutes, Ghost announced. State Trooper will be here in 20 minutes. Rachel closed her eyes. 20 minutes. She could hold on for 20 more minutes. She'd been holding on for 11 months. What was 20 more minutes? The radiator ticked steadily. The snow fell outside. And somewhere in the darkness, Victor Hale was waking up to the news that his perfect system was about to come crashing down. The state trooper's cruiser pulled into the parking lot at 12:47 a.m., lights off, moving slow and deliberate. Rachel watched through the window as the trooper stepped out and took in the scene. 200 motorcycles. Brothers standing in formation. A diner that should have closed an hour ago still blazing with light. He didn't reach for his weapon. He didn't call for backup. He just walked toward the door like a man who had been briefed and knew exactly what he was walking into. "Trooper Marcus Webb," he said as he entered, badge visible, hands relaxed at his sides. "Detective Warren sent me." Old Wolf stepped forward. "Raymond Stone, we spoke on the phone. You're the one with the evidence package. That's us." Webb's eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Rachel and the sleeping children before moving on. "Walk me through it," he said. "From the beginning." Sentinel took the lead. He laid out the case piece by piece. The recording, the license plate, the 17 insurance payouts, Teresa Marsh's dismissed complaint, Deputy Coyle's midnight visit. Webb listened without interrupting. His expression never changed, but his pen moved steadily across his notepad. When Sentinel finished, Webb was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot," he said finally. "There's more," Ghost said. "I've been digging while you were driving," and he turned his laptop so Webb could see the screen. "Victor Hale has a storage unit behind the Riverside Car Wash, Unit 14B. He's been paying cash for it for 6 years. No name on the rental agreement, just a P.O. box that traces back to Hale Family Services. How do you know what's in it? I don't, but I know what a man like Hale would need to keep somewhere his wife wouldn't find it. Original documents, forged signatures, maybe records of people who didn't make it to their signing appointments." Webb's jaw tightened. "People like Teresa Marsh." "Yeah, people like Teresa Marsh." Rachel's voice came out before she could stop it. "He mentioned her on the recording. He said same playbook as Teresa. He knew exactly what he was doing to me because he'd already done it to her." Webb turned to face her fully. "Mrs. Donovan, I need you to understand something. What happens next is going to move fast. We're going to get a warrant for that storage unit. We're going to execute it tonight before Hale has a chance to destroy evidence, and we're going to need you to stay somewhere safe until we have him in custody." "How long?" "A few hours, maybe less." Rachel looked at Emma and Lucas, still sleeping despite everything. "Where do we go?" "We have a safe house," Old Wolf said quietly. 20 minutes from here. Clean, warm, secure. Paul will stay with you and the children." Rachel's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" "All of this. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Old Wolf's expression softened. 17 years ago, my sister was in your shoes. Different man, same game. She went to the police. She went to her church. She went to everyone she could think of, and nobody helped her." His voice roughened. She didn't make it. Her boy ended up in foster care. I was overseas. I couldn't get back in time." He paused. "I made a promise after that. No more sisters left behind. No more children lost because adults were too scared to act." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry about your sister. Don't be sorry. Be safe. That's how you honor her." Webb's radio crackled. "Trooper Webb, we have judicial authorization for the warrant. Unit 14B Riverside Car Wash. You're cleared to execute." Webb acknowledged the call and turned to Shepard. "I'm going to need backup, official backup, but I wouldn't mind having some witnesses who can't be intimidated." Shepard smiled grimly. "How many do you need?" "As many as you can spare." The convoy that left Red Lantern Roadhouse at 1:03 a.m. was unlike anything Ridgewood Hollow had ever seen. One state trooper cruiser leading the way, 50 motorcycles following in tight formation, another trooper unit bringing up the rear. Rachel wasn't with them. She was in the back of Shepard's truck heading in the opposite direction with Paul and the children. Emma had woken briefly during the transfer and asked where they were going. "Somewhere warm," Rachel had told her. "Somewhere safe." Emma had nodded and fallen back asleep, trusting completely. That trust was the heaviest thing Rachel had ever carried. At the car wash, Webb cut his lights and pulled into the lot slowly. The storage unit sat behind the main building, a row of metal doors with cheap padlocks that reflected the trooper's flashlight. "Unit 14B, Webb said into his radio. "Stand by." The brothers spread out, not threatening, just present, watching, making sure nobody approached from the shadows. Webb approached the unit with bolt cutters. The padlock gave way with a single clean cut. The door rolled up. Webb's flashlight swept the interior, and Ghost heard him exhale sharply. "We're going to need more evidence bags," Webb said. The unit was filled with cardboard boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Filing cabinets along one wall. A folding table with a laptop that was still plugged in. And on that table, sitting in plain sight like a trophy, was a thick folder labeled Active Cases. Ghost photographed everything before anyone touched it. Timestamps visible. Chain of custody documented. Then Webb opened the folder. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Inside were 12 active files. 12 families currently being worked by Victor Hale. Names, addresses, insurance policy numbers, projected payout dates. Each file had detailed notes in Hale's handwriting about the target's vulnerabilities, their support systems, how isolated they were. Rachel Donovan's file was on top. Widow, 2 minor children, no family support, estimated policy value, $380,000, Ghost read aloud. Notes say highly vulnerable, minimal resistance, expected target signing date, January 15th. Sentinel's hands were shaking with anger. He was farming them. He was treating grieving families like livestock. What Webb set the folder aside carefully and moved to the filing cabinets. The first drawer was labeled Closed Cases. Inside were 37 files. 37 families that Victor Hale had already processed. Total estimated theft over $4 million. And in a separate section at the back of the drawer, marked with a red tab, were 3 files labeled Terminated. Teresa Marsh was the first. The second was a man named Robert Chen, who had died in a house fire 14 months ago. His insurance payout, $275,000. The third was a woman named Patricia Vega, who had overdosed on prescription medication 8 months ago. Her insurance payout, $195,000. 3 deaths, Ghost said quietly. All within 2 years of contacting Hale, all ruled accidental or suicide. Not anymore, Webb said. These are homicide investigations now. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Detective Warren, we found the mother lode. 37 closed cases, 12 active cases, and 3 deaths that need immediate review. I need forensics out here now. A pause. Yes, ma'am. Tonight. While they waited for the forensics team, Ghost found something else in the laptop. Emails, he said. Between Hale and Deputy Coyle, going back 4 years. What did they say? Ghost scrolled through the messages, his expression growing darker with each one. Coyle was feeding him information. Names of new widows and widowers from accident reports, addresses, next of kin contacts. He was basically giving Hale a target list. In exchange for what? Monthly payments, $5,000, plus a bonus for each successful case closure. Sentinel laughed bitterly. He was getting commission. A cop was getting commission for helping a predator steal from grieving families. Not anymore, Webb said. Forward those emails to Detective Warren. Coyle's going to need a lawyer. The forensics team arrived at 2:15 a.m. 2 vans, 4 technicians, and more evidence bags than Ghost could count. They worked through the unit systematically cataloging everything, photographing everything, building a case that would be impossible to dismiss. At 2:47 a.m., Webb's radio crackled again. Trooper Webb, be advised. Subject Victor Hale just attempted to cross the county line heading south. Highway Patrol has him pulled over at mile marker 47. Webb smiled for the first time all night. Tell them to hold him. I'll be there in 20 minutes with an arrest warrant. The brothers who had been standing watch let out a collective breath. Not cheering, not celebrating, just acknowledging that the hunt was finally over. Shepard pulled out his phone and called Paul. She can relax, he said. We got him. Rachel was sitting in the safe house living room watching her children sleep on a pull-out sofa when Paul handed her the phone. It's Shepard, he said. He has news. Rachel's hands were shaking as she took the phone. Hello? Mrs. Donovan. Shepard's voice was calm but warm. Victor Hale is in custody. He tried to run, but Highway Patrol stopped him at the county line. He's being transported to State Police headquarters right now. Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. Mrs. Donovan, are you there? I'm here, she managed. I can't. Take your time. Rachel looked at Emma and Lucas. At the one-eared rabbit tucked under Emma's chin. At Lucas's chest rising and falling steadily, his cough quieter now in the warm air. Is it really over? She whispered. The hardest part is over, Shepard said. There's still work to do, statements to give, court appearances. But Hale can't touch you now. He can't touch anyone. What about Deputy Coyle? State Police picked him up 30 minutes ago. He's facing conspiracy charges accessory to fraud and obstruction of justice. He's done. Rachel started crying. Not the desperate, exhausted tears she'd been fighting all night. These were different. These were relief. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You don't have to thank us. Just take care of those kids. That's enough. The line went quiet for a moment. Mrs. Donovan? Yes. When this is all over, when the trials are done and the dust settles, I want you to remember something. What? You walked into that diner tonight and asked for help. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. Most people never find the courage. You did. Rachel wiped her eyes. I didn't feel brave. I felt desperate. That's what brave feels like, Shepard said. Brave isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward anyway. At 3:22 a.m., Victor Hale was escorted into the State Police interrogation room in handcuffs. He was still wearing his bathrobe over flannel pajamas. His feet were in slippers. He looked like a grandfather who had been woken from a peaceful sleep. But his eyes were different, cold, calculating, already working angles. This is a mistake, he said as they sat him down. I'm a respected member of my community. I run charitable organizations. I help grieving families. Detective Warren sat across from him, a thick folder on the table between them. Yes, she said. Let's talk about how you help grieving families. She opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Photographs of the storage unit, copies of the active files, printouts of the emails between Hale and Deputy Coyle, and at the center a transcript of the recording Rachel had made 3 weeks ago. Keep her scared, not bruised. Cold weather does the work. Hale's face went pale. That's taken out of context. Really, what context makes cold weather does the work innocent? Hale's jaw tightened. I want a lawyer. Of course you do. Detective Warren stood. Victor Hale, you're under arrest for insurance fraud, forgery, extortion, intimidation of a witness, theft by deception, and 3 counts of murder in the 1st degree. Murder. Hale's mask cracked. I never killed anyone. Teresa Marsh, Robert Chen, Patricia Vega, all dead within 2 years of becoming your clients, all ruled accidents or suicides, all with insurance payouts going directly to Hale Family Services. Coincidence. We found your notes, Mr. Hale. Your detailed notes on how to isolate targets, how to apply pressure, how to make deaths look natural. Warren leaned forward. We have everything. Hale's composure shattered. You don't understand, he said, his voice rising. These people were going to lose everything anyway. I was helping them. I was making sure the money went somewhere useful instead of getting eaten up by lawyers and courts. You were stealing from grieving families and killing the ones who figured it out. I was providing a service. Warren shook her head slowly. You were running a death factory, and you did it for 7 years because everyone in that town was too scared or too comfortable to stop you. She gathered the folder and walked to the door. Enjoy your lawyer, Mr. Hale. You're going to need a good one. The door closed behind her. Victor Hale sat alone in the interrogation room, still wearing his bathrobe, still wearing his slippers, and finally looking exactly like what he was, a predator in a cage. At the safe house, Rachel had finally fallen asleep on the couch next to her children when a gentle knock woke her. Paul answered the door and returned with Old Wolf. Sorry to wake you, Old Wolf said quietly, but I thought you'd want to know. The arraignment is scheduled for 9 a.m. The prosecutor is charging him with everything. 3 murder counts, 37 fraud counts, and enough ancillary charges to keep him locked up for the rest of his life. Rachel sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the children. What about bail? The prosecutor is requesting remand. Given the flight attempt and the severity of the charges, he's confident the judge will agree. So he stays in jail. Until trial. And probably for the rest of his life after that. Rachel let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 11 months. What happens now to us? Old Wolf sat down across from her. That's up to you. But I want you to know that you have options. The insurance company is going to have to honor your husband's policy, the full $380,000. And there are victim compensation funds that can help with immediate expenses. I don't have anywhere to go. The motel kicked us out. My car is dead. I have nothing. You have more than you think. Old Wolf reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is from the brothers. We took up a collection tonight. Enough for first month's rent security deposit and basic necessities. No strings, no payback. Just neighbors helping neighbors. Rachel stared at the envelope. I can't accept that. You can. And you will. Because those kids need a roof over their heads and you need time to get back on your feet. Why? Why would strangers do this for someone they just met? Old Wolf was quiet for a moment. Because someone should have done it for my sister. Because someone should have done it for Teresa Marsh, and Robert Chen, and Patricia Vega. Because the world is full of people who look away, and we choose to look toward. He pressed the envelope into her hands. Take it. Use it. Build a life for those children. That's how you thank us. Rachel's fingers closed around the envelope. It felt like hope. It felt like possibility. It felt like a door opening after a year of doors slamming shut. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Pay it forward. Someday, somewhere, you're going to see someone who needs help that nobody else will give. And you're going to remember this night. And you're going to choose to look toward instead of away. Emma stirred on the couch. Mama, Rachel turned to her daughter. I'm here, baby. Is it morning? Almost. Go back to sleep. Emma's eyes found Old Wolf. She studied him for a moment with the unfiltered honesty of a child. Are you a good guy? She asked. Old Wolf smiled. It was a real smile, soft and tired and genuine. I try to be, he said. Every day I try to be. Emma nodded, satisfied with the answer, and closed her eyes again. Old Wolf stood. Get some rest, he told Rachel. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, but it's going to be the first day of a better life. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Yes. That rabbit your daughter carries, the one with one ear. Cotton. One of my brothers is good with a needle. If you want, he can fix it. Give it a new ear. Rachel looked at the stuffed rabbit, worn and loved and damaged. I think Emma might say no. She told me once that Cotton's missing ear is what makes him special. It shows he's been through hard things and survived. Old Wolf nodded slowly. Smart kid. She is. Then maybe she'll understand something important when she grows up. That the scars we carry aren't signs of weakness. They're proof of strength. They're evidence that we survived. He opened the door. Good night, Mrs. Donovan. Good night, Mr. Stone. The door closed quietly behind him. Rachel sat in the silence, holding the envelope full of hope, watching her children sleep, and letting herself believe for the first time in 11 months that the worst was finally behind them. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The first gray light of dawn was beginning to edge across the horizon. And somewhere in a state police holding cell, Victor Hale was learning what it felt like to have all his doors close at once. Rachel didn't feel joy. She didn't feel triumph. She felt something quieter, something deeper. She felt like a survivor. And tomorrow, for the first time in a very long time, she was going to wake up without being afraid. The morning after Victor Hale's arrest, Rachel woke to the sound of Lucas coughing. Not the dry, stubborn cough from the night before. This was wet and rattling, the kind that came from deep in the chest. Paul was already moving before Rachel could sit up. Easy, he said, kneeling beside Lucas on the pull-out sofa. Let me listen. He pressed a stethoscope to Lucas's small chest. His expression tightened. We need to get him to a doctor, now. Rachel's heart seized. How bad? Bad enough that waiting isn't an option. His lungs are congested. If we don't get ahead of this, it could turn into pneumonia. Emma was awake now, watching with wide eyes, clutching Cotton against her chest. Is Lucas going to be okay? She asked. Rachel pulled her daughter close. He's going to be fine, baby. We're going to take him to see a doctor. Paul was already on the phone. Shepard, I need a ride to Ridgewood Memorial. The boy's lungs are compromised. Yeah, now. Within 15 minutes, they were in Shepard's truck. Lucas wrapped in blankets, his small body shaking with each cough. Rachel held him on her lap, counting his breaths the way she used to count seconds to keep panic at bay. 1, 2, 3, 4. "How far?" she asked. 10 minutes, Shepard said. "Hold on." They made it in 8. The emergency room was quiet at 6:47 a.m. A nurse took one look at Lucas, heard his breathing, and rushed them straight back. "How long has he been coughing like this?" the doctor asked. "A few days," Rachel admitted. "Maybe a week. I couldn't afford to bring him in." The doctor didn't judge. She just worked. Oxygen monitor on his finger, stethoscope moving across his back, questions fired rapidly about symptoms, history, medications. "He's got bronchitis that's trending toward pneumonia," she said finally. "We need to admit him for observation and start IV antibiotics. He's dehydrated, and his oxygen levels are lower than I'd like." Rachel's legs went weak. "How long?" 2 or 3 days, depending on how he responds to treatment. "I don't have insurance. I don't have—" "Ma'am." The doctor's voice was firm but kind. "Your son needs treatment. We'll figure out the paperwork later. Right now, the only thing that matters is getting him better." Rachel started crying. She couldn't stop. A hand landed on her shoulder. Shepard, solid and steady. "We've got this," he said quietly. "Just focus on your boy." They admitted Lucas at 7:23 a.m. Rachel sat beside his bed, holding his small hand, watching the IV drip fluids into his arm. Emma curled up in a chair by the window, cotton in her lap, her eyes never leaving her brother. "Mama?" Lucas's voice was thin and hoarse. "I'm here, baby." "Am I sick?" "A little bit, but the doctors are going to make you better." "Will it hurt?" Rachel's heart broke. "Maybe a little, but I'll be right here the whole time. I'm not going anywhere." Lucas's eyes drifted shut. The oxygen tube in his nose hissed softly. Rachel didn't move. She didn't eat. She barely breathed. At 9 Hunzuru a.m., the arraignment began in a courtroom 20 miles away. Rachel wasn't there. She didn't need to be. The brothers had sent Ghost to observe and report. Victor Hale entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him. His lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, stood beside him with practiced confidence. "Your Honor," the lawyer began. "My client is a respected member of this community. He runs charitable organizations. He has no prior criminal record. We request bail be set at a reasonable amount pending trial." The prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chen, stood slowly. "Your Honor, the defendant is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 37 counts of insurance fraud, and multiple counts of extortion and witness intimidation. He attempted to flee the jurisdiction last night when he became aware of the investigation. He has significant financial resources and every incentive to run." She paused. "The people request remand without bail." Hale's lawyer sputtered. "That's excessive. My client—" "Your client," Chen interrupted, "maintained detailed files on how to isolate vulnerable targets and pressure them into signing away their assets. Your client kept notes on 3 people who died under suspicious circumstances, all of whom had insurance policies he subsequently collected. Your client was recorded discussing how to make a woman freeze to death." She let the words hang in the air. "This is not a man who forgot to file paperwork. This is a predator who spent 7 years hunting grieving families for profit. Remand is not only appropriate, it's required." The judge was quiet for a long moment. "Bail is denied. The defendant will be held pending trial." Ghost texted Shepard immediately. "No bail. He's locked up until trial." Shepard showed the message to Rachel in the hospital room. She read it 3 times before the words sank in. "He's really not getting out. He's really not getting out." Rachel looked at Lucas, sleeping fitfully in the hospital bed. At Emma dozing in the chair with cotton clutched to her chest. At her own hands still trembling even now. "It doesn't feel real," she whispered. "It will. Give it time." At 11:30 a.m., a victim advocate named Patricia Reyes arrived at the hospital. She was maybe 50, with kind eyes and practical shoes, and a manner that suggested she had seen worse things than this and survived them. "Mrs. Donovan, I'm Patricia. Detective Warren asked me to come." Rachel shook her hand weakly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "That's okay. That's what I'm here for." Patricia sat down across from her. "First things first. Your husband's life insurance policy, $380,000. Victor Hale never had legal authority to redirect it. The insurance company has already been notified of the fraud. They're expediting the payout." Rachel blinked. "How long?" "2 weeks, maybe less. They want this mess cleaned up as quickly as possible." 2 weeks. After 11 months of nothing, 2 weeks felt like a miracle. "What about the charges they said I might have to testify?" "Probably, but that's months away. The trial won't start until spring at the earliest. Right now, the most important thing is getting you and your children stable." Patricia pulled out a folder. "I've put together some resources. Emergency housing assistance, medical bill relief programs, food support, job placement services." She slid the folder across to Rachel. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Rachel stared at the folder like it might bite her. "I've been doing it alone for so long, I don't know how to stop." "You learn. One day at a time. One decision at a time. One breath at a time." Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. "Speaking of which, the brothers have found you an apartment. 2 bedrooms, clean, safe neighborhood. First 3 months covered. They want to know if you can look at it this afternoon." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Why are they doing all of this?" Patricia's expression softened. "Because they've seen what happens when people don't. And they made a choice a long time ago to be different." The apartment was on Oak Street, a quiet block with trees that probably looked beautiful in spring. Right now they were bare and skeletal, but Rachel didn't care. The building had a security door that locked. The windows had working latches. The radiators actually produced heat. Shepard walked her through while Paul stayed with the children at the hospital. 2 bedrooms, Shepard said. "Kitchen small but functional. Bathrooms clean. Landlord's a friend of the club. He knows your situation. He's not going to hassle you." Rachel walked through the empty rooms slowly. Her footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. "I haven't had my own place in 8 months, she said. "After Marcus died, I couldn't afford the house. Then the apartment, then the motel, then nothing. Now you have something." Rachel stopped in the doorway of the smaller bedroom. It was tiny, barely big enough for bunk beds. "Emma and Lucas could share this room," she said softly. "They'd probably feel safer together anyway. Whatever works for your family." Rachel turned to face Shepard. "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "The envelope Old Wolf gave me. How much is in it?" "Enough." "That's not an answer." Shepard's jaw tightened slightly. $9,400, from brothers across 4 chapters. Nobody gave more than they could afford, and everybody gave what they could. Rachel's breath caught. "I can't pay that back. Not for years. Maybe not ever." "Nobody's asking you to." "Then how do I—" "You live," Shepard interrupted gently. "You raise those kids. You build something good out of the wreckage. That's how you pay it back." Rachel's eyes were burning. I don't know how to do that. Nobody does, not at first. You figure it out as you go. They stood in silence for a moment. When can I move in? Rachel finally asked. Whenever you want. The key's already yours. Shepard reached into his pocket and pulled out a brass key on a simple ring. He placed it in Rachel's palm. It was warm from his body heat. Such a small thing. Such an enormous thing. Thank you, Rachel whispered. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You walked into that diner and asked for help. Everything else flows from that one brave moment. Lucas was released from the hospital 3 days later. His lungs were clear. His cough was gone. He walked out of Ridgewood Memorial, holding Rachel's hand, squinting at the winter sunlight like a creature emerging from a cave. Is this our new home? He asked, looking up at the Oak Street building. This is our new home, Rachel confirmed. Does it have a TV? Rachel laughed. It was the first real laugh she'd managed in longer than she could remember. Not yet, but maybe someday. The apartment had been furnished while they were at the hospital. Nothing fancy. A couch that had seen better days, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs, 2 beds, one for Rachel, 1 bunk bed for the kids, sheets that smelled like fabric softener. Basics. Necessities. Dignity. Emma explored every room like a detective searching for clues. She opened all the cabinets. She tested all the faucets. She pressed her face against every window. Mama, she said finally, there's a lock on the door. I know, baby. A real lock that we control. I know. Emma's face did something complicated. She was 6 years old, and she understood far more than any 6-year-old should have to understand. Good, she said quietly. That's good. Rachel knelt down and pulled her daughter into a hug. We're safe now, she whispered. We're going to be okay. Emma hugged back fiercely. I know, Mama. I know. The first week in the apartment was strange. Rachel kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the landlord to change his mind, for the money to disappear, for Victor Hale to somehow reach through the walls and drag her back into the darkness. None of that happened. What happened instead was quieter, smaller, more profound. Lucas started sleeping through the night without coughing. Emma started laughing again, real laughs, not the forced ones she'd been producing for months to make Rachel feel better. Rachel started eating regular meals instead of giving all the food to the kids and pretending she wasn't hungry. Patricia Reyes came by twice a week with updates. The insurance payout was processing. The fraud investigation was expanding. 7 more families had come forward after hearing about Hale's arrest. The case was growing. You started something, Patricia told Rachel during one visit. When you walked into that diner and asked for help, you cracked open a door that had been locked for 7 years. Other people are walking through it now. I didn't mean to start anything. I just wanted hot water. That's how most revolutions begin. Somebody asks for something simple, something they shouldn't have to ask for, and the world changes. 2 weeks after the arrest, the insurance check arrived. Rachel stared at the number for a full minute before she could process it. $380,000. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life, more money than she had ever expected to see. And it had almost been stolen from her by a man who smiled like a saint. She sat down at the kitchen table and cried. Not from grief this time. From relief. From rage. From the overwhelming realization that she had almost lost everything and had somehow impossibly held on. Emma found her there 10 minutes later. Mama, why are you crying? Rachel wiped her eyes and pulled Emma onto her lap. Happy tears, baby. These are happy tears. Is that a lot of money? It's enough. It's enough to take care of us for a long time. Emma studied the check with 6-year-old solemnity. Daddy left that for us. Rachel's throat tightened. Yeah, baby. Daddy left that for us, to make sure we'd be okay. Then we should use it good, so Daddy would be proud. Rachel held her daughter tighter. We will, baby. I promise. That night after the children were asleep, Rachel sat alone in the living room with a notebook and a pen. She started making a list, not of debts or fears or problems, a list of things to do, things to build, things to become. Pay off Marcus's remaining medical bills, set up college funds for Emma and Lucas, find a job that didn't require her to beg, maybe go back to school someday, maybe become someone who could help other people the way she had been helped. The list grew longer. The future grew clearer. For the first time in 11 months, Rachel Donovan could see past tomorrow. 3 weeks after the arrest, Shepard stopped by with news. Trial date's been set, he said. April 15th. The prosecutor thinks it'll last about 2 weeks. Will I have to testify? Probably, but you'll have support. Patricia will be there. We'll be there. You won't face him alone. Rachel nodded slowly. I'm scared, she admitted. That's normal. What if I freeze up? What if I can't do it? Shepard sat down across from her. Let me tell you something about fear. Fear is just your brain trying to protect you from things that might hurt. It's not your enemy. It's a warning system. The trick is learning to thank it for the warning and then do the thing anyway. Is that what you do? Every day, every time I get on a bike, every time I walk into a situation where I don't know what's going to happen, I feel the fear, I acknowledge it, and then I move forward. Rachel was quiet for a moment. He took so much from me. Time, money, safety, my sense of who I was. And now you're taking it back, one piece at a time. What if I can't get it all back? You won't. Nobody ever does. But you'll build something new, something that's yours, something he can never touch. Shepard stood. I have to go. But I want you to remember something. What? You're not the same woman who walked into that diner 4 weeks ago. That woman was desperate, broken, running out of hope. He paused. The woman I'm looking at now is a survivor, a fighter, a mother who walked through hell to protect her children. Don't ever forget the difference. Rachel walked him to the door. Shepard? Yeah. What happens after the trial to you and the brothers? He smiled slightly. We go back to doing what we do, riding, helping where we can, looking out for people who need it. Will I see you again? If you need us, we'll be there. That's how this works. Once you're family forever. He stepped out into the cold. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Donovan. Rachel. My name is Rachel. Shepard nodded once. Take care of yourself, Rachel. She watched him walk to his truck, climb in and drive away. Then she closed the door, tested the lock twice out of habit, and went to check on her sleeping children. Lucas had kicked off his blankets again. She pulled them back up and tucked them under his chin. His breathing was easy and clear. Emma had cotton pressed against her cheek. Even in sleep, she held on tight. Rachel stood there for a long time, watching them breathe, counting the seconds between each exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. But this time she wasn't counting to keep panic at bay. She was counting because she could. Because they were safe. Because they were alive. Because they had survived. The trial of Victor Hale began on April 15th at 9:00 a.m. Rachel arrived at the courthouse an hour early, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold her purse. Patricia Reyes walked beside her. Shepard and Old Wolf waited near the entrance. "You ready?" Patricia asked. "No," Rachel admitted. "But I'm going anyway." The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Families of other victims sat in clusters, some holding hands, some sitting alone. Rachel recognized a few faces from the news coverage. Women like her. Men like her. People Victor Hale had tried to destroy. When Hale was brought in, Rachel's stomach clenched. He looked different from that night in his bathrobe. Clean-shaven now, hair combed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Rachel's car. But his eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. Predatory. He scanned the courtroom and found Rachel's face in the crowd. He smiled. Rachel's blood turned to ice. "Don't look at him," Patricia whispered. "Look at me. Look at the prosecutor. Look at anywhere else." Rachel forced her eyes away. The first week of testimony was devastating. Prosecutor Sarah Chen called witness after witness. Families who had lost everything. Bank records that showed the money trail. The storage unit evidence laid bare in excruciating detail. And then the 3 death investigations. The medical examiner testified about Teresa Marsh, about how the original autopsy had missed signs of sedatives in her system, about how the accidental exposure looked very different when you knew someone had a financial motive to let her freeze. Robert Chen's wife testified about her husband's final weeks, about how paranoid he had become, about the threats he received, about the fire that started in a room with no electrical problems and no logical ignition source. Patricia Vega's sister testified about the prescription medications Patricia didn't know she was taking, about the forged doctor's signature, about the overdose that Patricia's family had always suspected wasn't voluntary. By the end of the first week, the prosecution had painted a picture of a man who didn't just steal from grieving families. He eliminated them when they became inconvenient. Rachel's turn came on day 9. She walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like they might collapse at any moment. She could feel Victor Hale's eyes on her. She could feel the weight of everyone watching. "Mrs. Donovan," Prosecutor Chen began gently, "can you tell the court how you first met Victor Hale?" Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. "At my husband's funeral. He approached me at the reception. He said he was a grief benefits coordinator. He said he could help me navigate the paperwork." "And did you accept his help?" "Yes. I was falling apart. Marcus had just died. I had 2 small children. I didn't know how I was going to pay for anything. Victor seemed like an answer to prayer." "What happened next?" Rachel told the story. The fees, the documents, the address changes she didn't authorize, the benefits that stopped arriving, the growing realization that something was terribly wrong. "And when you tried to report your concerns to the police, they said they would look into it. Nobody ever called me back." "Mrs. Donovan, can you describe the recording you made on December 28th of last year?" Rachel's hands were trembling. "I was behind Red Lantern Roadhouse, taking a shortcut to the bus stop. Victor's SUV was parked near the propane cage. He was on a speakerphone call. I could hear everything." "What did you hear?" He said, "Keep her scared, not bruised." And he said, "Cold weather does the work." He said my insurance policy was worth $380,000, and he wasn't going to lose it. He said same playbook as Teresa. "Did you know who Teresa was at the time?" "No. I found out later that she was Teresa Marsh, the woman who froze to death 2 years ago." The courtroom was completely silent. "Mrs. Donovan, what did you do with that recording?" "I went to the police. Deputy Coyle took my statement. He said he would handle it." "And did he?" "No." 3 days later, 4 men grabbed me behind the bus station and told me I had until January 15th to sign the documents, or I would freeze just like Teresa. Chen paused to let that sink in. What happened on the night of January 11th? Rachel's voice cracked. My car battery died. We had been kicked out of the motel that morning. I had nowhere to go. I walked 2 miles through the snow with my children to a diner and asked for hot water so they could eat instant soup. And that's where you met members of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. Yes. They were the first people in months who actually listened to me, who believed me, who did something. Hale's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He tried to paint Rachel as unstable, as desperate, as someone who might have misheard or misinterpreted. Rachel answered every question calmly, truthfully, without flinching. When she stepped down from the stand, her legs were shaking so badly she could barely walk, but she walked anyway. Patricia was waiting for her in the hallway. You did it, Patricia said. You did amazing. Rachel couldn't speak. She just grabbed Patricia and held on. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Rachel sat in the courthouse hallway the entire time, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except what might happen next. At 4:47 p.m., word came that the jury had reached a verdict. Rachel took her seat in the courtroom. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Shepard sat 2 rows behind her. Old Wolf was near the back door. Victor Hale stood as the jury filed in. The foreman, a middle-aged man with gray at his temples, held the verdict form. On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Teresa Marsh, how do you find guilty? A murmur swept through the courtroom. On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Robert Chen, how do you find guilty? On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Patricia Vega, how do you find guilty? The foreman continued through all 37 fraud charges. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each word landing like a hammer blow. When it was over, Victor Hale stood motionless. His mask had finally cracked. He looked like what he truly was, a small, pathetic man who had built his life on the suffering of others. Rachel didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She just breathed. In, out, in, out. It was over. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, read the list of convictions aloud. Then she looked at Victor Hale. Mr. Hale, you preyed on the most vulnerable members of our community. You targeted grieving widows and orphaned children. You stole their money, their security, and their peace of mind. And when they threatened to expose you, you killed them. She paused. I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty in my 30 years on the bench. Victor Hale's lawyer started to speak. The judge silenced him with a look. For the 3 counts of murder in the first degree, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the 37 counts of fraud, I sentence you to an additional 20 years to be served consecutively. For the charges of extortion and witness intimidation, I sentence you to an additional 10 years. She set down her papers. You will die in prison, Mr. Hale. That is the only mercy this court can offer the families you destroyed. As the bailiffs led him away, Victor Hale looked back at Rachel one last time. She met his gaze. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. And she watched him disappear through the door that would close behind him forever. 1 year later, Rachel stood behind the counter at Red Lantern Roadhouse, pouring coffee for the morning rush. Dolores had offered her the job 3 days after the trial ended. I owe you, Dolores had said. This town owes you. Let me start making it right. Rachel had accepted. Not because she needed the money anymore. The insurance payout had given her security she'd never known. She accepted because she needed purpose. Because she needed to be part of something. Because she needed to prove to herself that she could build a life from the ashes. Emma was 7 now. She was in 2nd grade reading 2 years above her level, still carrying cotton everywhere she went. The one-eared rabbit had been offered a new ear multiple times. Emma always refused. His missing ear is what makes him special, she said. It shows he survived. Lucas was 5, starting kindergarten in the fall. His lungs were clear. His laugh was loud. He had no memory of the night his mother begged for hot water. Rachel was grateful for that. The diner had changed too. Not physically. The same radiator still clicked. The same coffee machine still sputtered. The same booths still creaked when you sat down. But behind the register, there was a small sign now. Hand-lettered. Simple. Hot water fund. If you need it, ask. No questions. In the first year, that fund had paid for 312 meals, 14 motel nights during storms, 6 bus tickets for people trying to escape bad situations, 1 funeral for a man who died with no family to claim him. Rachel tracked every dollar. Not because anyone asked her to, because she needed to know that the worst thing that ever happened to her had become something good. The door opened at 7:23 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and a young woman walked in. Rachel knew immediately. The hollow eyes, the hunched shoulders, the way she clutched her purse like it contained everything she owned in the world. The woman approached the counter slowly. Her voice was barely audible. "Excuse me, I was wondering if I could just have some hot water. I have soup packets. I can pay. I have enough for water." Rachel set down the coffee pot. For a moment she was back in that night, standing in this very spot, begging strangers for something simple, something she shouldn't have had to beg for. But she wasn't that woman anymore. "Sit down," Rachel said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "You're going to eat, real food, and you're going to tell me what's going on." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I can't afford—" "You don't have to afford anything. Not today. Not here." Rachel came around the counter and guided the woman to a booth. The same booth where Shepard had knelt beside Emma and asked about Cotton's name. "What's your name?" Rachel asked. "Maria Santos." "I'm Rachel. Are you in trouble, Maria?" The woman started crying. "My husband died 6 months ago. There was supposed to be insurance money, but a man from my church said he could help me with the paperwork, and now everything is gone, and I don't know what to do, and I have a little girl waiting in the car because I was too ashamed to bring her inside." Rachel's blood went cold. "What was the man's name?" "Reynolds. Thomas Reynolds. He said he was a grief benefits coordinator." Rachel grabbed her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Shepard answered on the 2nd ring. "Rachel, everything okay?" "No. Get Ghost and Sentinel. We've got another one." "Where?" "Red Lantern. She's sitting in front of me right now." A pause. Then, 20 minutes. Rachel hung up and turned back to Maria. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. What happened to you is not your fault. You are not alone. And we are going to help you." Maria stared at her. "Why, you don't even know me." Rachel thought about that night, about Shepard kneeling to Emma's level, about old Wolf handing her an envelope full of hope, about 200 motorcycles rolling into a parking lot because someone decided that a stranger's pain was worth fighting for. Because someone helped me when I was in your shoes, and she helped me because someone helped her. That's how this works. That's how we break the cycle. Rachel reached across the table and took Maria's shaking hands. Your daughter. What's her name? Sophia. She's 4. Bring her inside. It's cold out there, and no child should wait in a car while her mother begs for help she deserves. Maria was crying hard now. I don't understand. I walked in here asking for water. That's all I wanted. Just water. Rachel smiled. It was a real smile. A survivor's smile. That's how it starts. Someone asks for something small, something simple, something they shouldn't have to ask for at all. She squeezed Maria's hands tighter. And then everything changes. 20 minutes later, Shepard walked through the door with Ghost and Sentinel behind him. They found Rachel sitting in the booth with Maria and a 4-year-old girl who was carefully eating scrambled eggs. Shepard slid into the booth across from them. Thomas Reynolds, he said. Already on Ghost's radar. 3 complaints filed, all dismissed. Operating out of a church on the south side. Same pattern? Rachel asked. Same pattern. Different predator. Rachel looked at Maria. These men are going to help you. They helped me when I thought there was no hope left. They're going to make sure Thomas Reynolds never hurts anyone again. Maria stared at the leather vests, the patches, the hard faces that somehow looked kind. Who are you people? Old Wolf had walked in behind them. He answered before anyone else could. We're the ones who look toward instead of away, that's all. Nothing more, nothing less. He sat down at the counter and nodded at Rachel. Coffee when you get a chance. Rachel poured his cup and set it in front of him. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. For that night. For what came after. For all of it. Old Wolf took a sip. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. You walked through that door and asked for help. Everything else was just people doing what people should do. He set down his cup. But you already knew that, because now you're doing the same thing. One person at a time. One cup of hot water at a time. That's how the world changes, Rachel. Not through speeches or politics or grand gestures. Through small acts of courage that add up until nobody can ignore them anymore. Rachel watched Shepard and Ghost and Sentinel working with Maria. Watched Sophia eating her eggs. Watched the morning light streaming through windows that once felt like barriers and now felt like openings. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago. Desperate. Broken. Begging strangers for hot water so her children could eat. She thought about the woman she was now. Employed. Stable. Part of something larger than herself. And she thought about all the women she might help in the years to come. All the Marias and Teresas and Patricias who deserved someone to look toward them instead of away. The door opened again. A regular customer walked in, stomping snow off his boots. Morning, Rachel. Coffee? Coming right up. She grabbed the pot and poured. The steam rose between them, warm and simple and ordinary. But ordinary felt different now. Ordinary felt precious. Ordinary felt earned. Behind her, Maria was laughing at something Sophia had said. A real laugh. The first one in months, probably. Rachel knew that sound. She remembered the moment when it had come back to her, when she realized that joy wasn't something Victor Hale had stolen forever. It was something she could reclaim, rebuild, pass on. That was the real victory. Not the guilty verdict, not the life sentence, not the money recovered or the justice served. The real victory was this moment. This ordinary Thursday morning in a roadside diner, this cup of coffee poured for a neighbor, this laugh from a woman who thought she would never laugh again. The real victory was proving that monsters can be beaten, that silence can be broken, that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. Rachel set down the coffee pot and looked around the diner that had changed her life. She had walked in here begging for hot water. Now she was the one offering it, and that she realized was the whole story. Not the pain or the fear or the years of struggle, not the arrest or the trial or the verdict. The story was simpler than that. The story was a woman who asked for help, a community that answered, and a ripple that kept spreading person to person, act to act, until the world became a little bit safer than it was before. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And in the comments, tell me this: where are you watching from? And who was the person who made you feel safe when you needed it most? Because sometimes the difference between drowning and surviving is one hand reaching out, one voice saying, "I believe you," one door staying open when all the others have closed. And sometimes it starts with the smallest thing in the world, just hot water, that's all.